Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The White House is carefully weighing its response to the attack that killed 3 U.S. soldiers at a military base in Jordan. Critics say the delay is sending a message of weakness to America's enemies.
They also believe it's giving terrorists the green light for more attacks. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
The Pentagon identified the 3 U.S. soldiers killed in Sunday's attack. The mother of Specialist Kennedy Sanders spoke of her 24-year-old daughter.
Kennedy was very outgoing. She was very athletic, very competitive. So all of these different things that she had plans for that, were just cut short in the blink of an eye. So, I just feel like with somebody like her that's so full of life, it's just unfair that she'll never get to realize those dreams that she had.
The Iranian-backed Islamic resistance in Iraq claimed responsibility, but Iran has denied any link to the drone strike that also wounded more than 30 U.S. soldiers. The attack drone reportedly slipped through U.S. defenses because it was confused with a U.S. drone returning to base. National Security spokesman John Kirby promised a response.
We do not seek another war. We do not seek to escalate. But we will absolutely do what is required to protect ourselves, to continue that mission, and to respond appropriately to these attacks.
Kirby said President Biden, as commander-in-chief, will respond in a time and manner of his choosing.
We'll also do it fully cognizant of the fact that these groups, backed by Tehran, have just taken the lives of American troops. And I think I'll leave it there.
Some Middle East analysts say U.S. enemies in the region are sensing weakness.
When they hear proportionality, reasonable, moderate, we don't want a regional war, that sounds so good in Davos. But our adversaries hear that as weakness and a green light for aggression.
Bowman says Iran's goal is clear.
The goal of the Islamic Republic of Iran here, if we're just being direct and blunt, is to kick American forces out of the region so it can more effectively control and undermine its neighbors and advance its radical ideology.
Meanwhile, the UN says it's taking swift action following the allegations UNRWA staff members took part in the October 7th massacres. The Wall Street Journal reporting that 10% of UNRWA's workforce are linked to terror groups in Gaza, while at least a dozen participated in the attacks, including kidnapping, and tracked to the sites where scores of Israelis were murdered. Most of them also served as teachers in UNRWA schools. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the UNRWA scandal.
It is imperative that UNRWA immediately, as it said it would, investigate, that it hold people accountable as necessary, and that it review its procedures.
Adi Schwartz, co-author of The War of Return, says he believes the current investigation may be the same as many before.
Yes, there are a few bad apples. We will get rid of them, but please give us back the money and we can all go back to normal. I think this would be a terrible mistake.
On Monday, Hamas rejected a proposal for the release of the hostages. In a statement, it said, Israel must cease its aggression and withdraw from Gaza before any exchange transaction takes place. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
There needs to be outrage over this, and we've been warning for years, going all the way back to when Hamas won its election in 2006 and then suspended elections in 2007. This is a terror group. It's been identified internationally and designated a terror group. Now, here are the facts. 1,200 members of a terror group, and whether it's Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they are salaried employees of UNRWA. And to say, oh, this is a shock, and we're going to act swiftly, and we're going to have an investigation. Are you kidding me? 10% of your workforce are terrorists, and you're paying them every single week. It makes no sense to me. And here's where it gets absolutely horrific. 12 salaried members of UNRWA participated in the October 7th attack. One was part of the group that massacred 97 people in a kibbutz. 2 of them kidnapped women from Israel and carried them back to Gaza. Now, when I sit and think about that and think that my taxpayer pay my taxes, I'm a taxpayer, my taxes went to that, are you kidding me? That should never happen. It should never exist. The U.S. taxpayer should never support a terrorist group, but we've been doing it for years and years and years. And the State Department and our intelligence services have to know this. You can't hide 1,200 people on your payroll and not have it be wide known. You can't hide the terror network tunnels underneath Gaza and have it not be widely known. That terror network is bigger than the London subway. It's bigger than the New York subway. You look at this and go, how could this ever happen? Well, it was built with our taxpayer dollars. Let us forever, the State Department is announcing we're suspending payments to UNRWA. We should never do it ever, 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 ever again, because they have clearly shown us what they are doing. They're using our money to educate their children in terror. They are paying terrorists, they're keeping them on the payroll, and then they're unleashing them on a civilian population in Israel. It has to stop, and it has to stop today. In other news, for the first time in 150 years, the House of Representatives is attempting to impeach a cabinet secretary. It's just one sign of how the chaos at the southern border is spreading to Washington. CBN News White House correspondent Abigail Robertson reports.
The two impeachment articles from Republicans on the Homeland Security Committee charge that Mayorkas has committed high crimes and misdemeanors by failing to comply with federal immigration laws amid the ongoing crisis at the southern border.
There has been a willful and refusal to comply with the law and an abuse of power.
The first article specifically accuses Mayorkas with willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law for repeatedly violating immigration and border security laws throughout his career. Article 2 charges include breach of public trust for knowingly making false statements and knowingly obstructing lawful oversight of DHS. The DHS claims the impeachment is unconstitutional and evidence-free, claiming Republicans don't want to fix the problem, they want to campaign on it. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the House will hold a vote on the articles of impeachment as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the Senate, negotiators on the highly anticipated bipartisan border deal are signaling they have a deal and the text of the bill is almost ready.
This bill could be ready to be on the floor of the United States Senate next week.
But the bill's fate in both the Senate and House is uncertain, as former President Trump speaks out against it on the campaign trail.
There is zero chance I will support this horrible open borders betrayal of America.
Senator James Lankford, the lead GOP negotiator, claims the deal makes dramatic changes to the immigration system and gives the commander-in-chief new authorities to take action at the border.
Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year.
David Beer from the Cato Institute tells CBN News there are many things in the bill Trump asked for as president.
I don't understand what his strategy is, but it certainly does not accord with how he behaved when he was in office.
Oklahoma's Republican Party approved a resolution over the weekend condemning Senator Lankford for his role in the bipartisan border negotiations, claiming he's playing fast and loose with Democrats on border policy and putting the safety and security of Americans in danger. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, cutting through the politics, there absolutely is a crisis at our border. We've been claiming it on this show for years, going back to the first week that Biden took office, that, well, guess what? There's a surge of immigration, illegal immigration, happening at our southern border. And it was happening in numbers that were incomprehensible, 200,000, 300,000 a month. And that adds up to 2.4 to 3.6 million people a year. There's no way social services in the United States can absorb that many people. There's no way the immigration system could do it. And it's all based on public perception and public perception internationally. There was a new president in town, and he wasn't going to enforce the immigration laws, and therefore we get to go. And so let's gather up everything we can. Let's make the long, dangerous trip. Let's put our lives at risk. Let's get to this border, because if we can get to the United States, we've come to the promised land. All that needs to happen is for the administration to say, no, we're going to stop this. We're going to deport you. We're not going to go through some sort of immigration court where you get released into the population and can travel wherever you want. And if you don't show up for your court date, so what? If it's not a crisis, can the administration please listen to the Democrat mayors whose cities are being overwhelmed with this? If they don't listen to Texas and they want to stop Texas from enforcing its own border, okay, well, can you listen to your own party? And can we stop this? It's absolutely a crisis, and it's a crisis created because the administration says we don't want to enforce the immigration laws. Let's understand the basics of the problem. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. What part of illegal don't you understand? If it's illegal to cross this way, then you need to enforce the law.